session started with a keynote by Mr. Akihiko Tobe, General Manager, Social Innovation Business Promotion Division, Hitachi Limited.
Thank you very much for giving this opportunity to share my experience. These are the components that we have to pick up to create some kind of concept when it comes to build the smart city. To make these kind of cities, or especially in the public infrastructure, technology integrator is a key player to develop and manage the entire system by the intimate partnership with the developer. When it comes to think about the planning phases, there are government, public agencies, master planners, or the developers, which will take a main part of planning. So the collaboration with master developer and the integrator is very key to create smart city. And these are the things, and Hitachi would like to be an integrator. I will give you one of the example which Hitachi joined 4 years ago to build some kind of town to create some of the cities, not just putting a new technology, but just thinking about what the people would like to want in that city. And Kashiwa City, which is located 25 kilometers from Tokyo, the center of Tokyo, and the population of the Kashiwa City is 4,000. And this is the land readjustment project area covering roughly 273 hectares and with a planned population of 26,000. Right now, the living people is 5,000 in 2030 or something like that. That's one of the challenge that we are going to build. When it comes to build those kind of cities, the peoples or the stakeholders, there are some kind of discussions. And those stakeholders pick up 3 items, concept. One is an environmental symbiotic city. The second is a city of health and longevity. Third one is a city of new industry creations. Why do they choose those kind of 3 topics? Because these are the issues that Japanese people have in the near future. This is the project that we engaged in. That's all. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to kick off this panel discussion with a very simple question, which all of us ask ourselves every day, which is, what is your definition of a smart city, and what sort of infrastructure and seamlessness do you expect in a smart city in India? Jagan.
I think a smart city is one that collectively decides on ways to preserve its investments in the next generation, that protects its assets, uses technology, uses innovation in whatever way it can, but does that collectively. And I think the smart city is really the city that is able to draw that connection between what everybody wants and how they get to what everybody wants.
Karuna, from your point of view, what really is a smart city? When you put those thoughts on paper, what are you thinking of?
Well, see, according to me, smart cities, I have tried to demystify, simplify, worked around it for a long time. I think in the last 10 years, there has been an enormous amount of confusion on what is a smart city. So several people tried to see smart cities through the lens of technology, and several others tried to see through the lens of investments. But today, I think those layers of mystery have been peeled off, and what we see by and large, there's a global consensus that smart cities are nothing but cities that are livable, cities that are sustainable, and cities that are inclusive. I think the very important point is about inclusion. Increasingly, we are moving to a world where inclusion is seen as a non-negotiable. Just like how we build companies, when you have a customer and you say customer is the raison d'etre of a company, you keep the customer right in the middle, design products around his requirements, design services around his requirements. The same thing is going to happen to cities that are smart today. Put the citizen right at the center. Design infrastructure around his requirements, design services for his requirements. So for me, it is as clear, as crystal clear as that.
Neeraj, you know what it goes into creating a smart city. Is it possible to have a city that serves everybody? And would you say a smart city isn't really all that black and white? There's subtle areas to it.
We have siloed the smart city concept so much that none of us are aware of the big picture. The person who is the IT man, he feels that the ICT connect of the entire backbone of the smart city is what the smart city is all about. The person who is an electrical expert, he feels that the smart grid is the only thing which needs to be talked about, and without a smart grid there would be no smart city. Similarly, if I'm a water expert, then I would talk about 24/7 water, STPs, desalination, and so on and so forth. So all of us, from a governance angle, if somebody is an administrator, he thinks about e-governance as the topic which should be talked of when we talk of smart city. So we need to take care of the big picture, and the big picture, I fully agree with Karuna, it revolves around the citizen itself.
Reggie, from your point of view, you've been a great votary of the right to electricity for all. How much of this is doable, and is your smart city the always on, always powered city?
Smart city concept is relatively new, and developed economies where this concept has gained momentum, they basically have physical infrastructure, adequate physical infrastructure, 24/7 electricity, 24/7 water, public transportation system. But when it comes to developing countries like India, where cities have several hours of power cut, 2 hours of rationed water supply, the accent need to shift to physical infrastructure. From that perspective, the first concept paper which Ministry of Urban Development issued last year, 4 different pillars of a smart city: physical infrastructure, social infrastructure, economic infrastructure, and financial infrastructure, and a variety of services and solutions built around, was a good starting point. Here, if you take one infrastructure domain as an anchor infrastructure, take the case of electricity, where we have a need for doing that because people don't have electricity most of the time. Automate that, make smart grid. The digital assets which you build for the smart grid, extend it to other infrastructure sectors like water distribution, gas distribution, the billing and collection systems, the city control room, all that which is required for an electric utility, extend it to other sectors at marginal cost. We will be able to achieve better business case, move into a smarter city much faster.
Niranjan, housing. Is a smart city about housing for all?
Of course it is housing for all. Food, clothing, housing is really a necessity of mankind, and that's what we get. But you know, I agree with all the people here who say that you need to get this physical infrastructure first and also energy up front. But look at what only technology brings. It brings that the most efficient car that I have can be used only on alternate days. I mean, any sensible person in this world in the last 60 years would have said mass transport is what you needed and not more cars. So the government subsidizes cars more than it invests into mass transport. It's nothing to do with only technology. It needs common sense to say what you need to bring. Take Mumbai, for example. We have planned sewage systems. Fantastic. Every place is getting sewered. Do you know that the government, municipal corporation, does not recycle a single drop of sewage? Private projects like mine, we recycle 4 million liters of sewage every day for the last 20 years, which is reused for the purpose of flushing, and drainage and other things, and washing and gardening. But the government does not do it. So the biggest Maidans of Mumbai, the race course of Mumbai, the Mazad Maidans of Mumbai don't use recycled water. So what is the type of ideas that are coming at the city level concepts? We need to first understand that what she said is correct. The people-centric ideas need to come first. We need to bring about that perspective that you can't say great energy efficient cars, least pollutant cars, but you put 10,000 cars and not one train. So somewhere down the line, the planning for the cities needs to be done in a holistic way, not in some well kind of a thing which does not bring about it. The inclusiveness of the population is extremely important, because today when you're making alternate day cars, I have 6 cars in my house, so I can have different numbers to drive on every day. But what about the type of person who has just 1 scooter? What does that type of person do? What kind of position are we pushing these kind of people without the solutions put on the table?
Do you find that typically governments are able to plan cities which are 30, 40 years into the future and not actually grappling with the kind of problems that Niranjan spoke of? We are looking backwards and saying, oh, I'm going to put a sewage system in, when what you need is a city which will serve citizens for another 40 or 50 years.
When it comes to avoid the natural disaster, such as happened in Chennai, we suffer the natural disaster in Japan. Those kind of resilient city is a common barrier that we have to seek to build the city, not only for our present generation, but for our descendants, the next generation. We have to put some kind of legacy to the next generation. Do not think just only the present generation. That's not the city.
Now, in a country like India, which is so diverse, and you look at the 100-odd cities, smart cities that the government wants, the needs of Ajmer are very different from the needs of Vizag or Chennai. How do you cater to such a heavy level of localization, and how do you do that smartly when you want to create a so-called smart city?
Well, the smart city mission is actually not wanting to define one particular type of smart city, because Ajmer needs to become a different kind of smart city than Visakhapatnam, for instance. But what it seeks to do is to create the mechanisms by which the public and decision makers and other stakeholders, including business groups, industries and so on, that create the economy of the city, actually sit together or at least provide their inputs, so that this goal that is set for transforming Ajmer or Visakhapatnam or Bhopal is a goal that has been reached collectively. It's important to understand that the smart city mission is not about defining what is smart, it's about how to become smart, right? And one of the key learnings from Chennai or from Mumbai before that, and many other disasters, for instance, is the cost of inaction. Today, Chennai, the damages to Chennai are likely to mount to thousands, tens of thousands of crores, which might actually amount to the whole size of the smart city mission itself. Just the damage done to one city because it didn't plan well, it didn't think about its needs properly, and it treated the poor and the rich as being different somehow. And now everybody has suffered because of that. So if we have to learn from our mistakes, this is one of the key learnings, that we need customized solutions for our cities, but at the same time, we need to upgrade our standards so that our citizens can get what is available in the world. Every city has to make a leap of faith in some sense. It has to make that jump starting of a completely new paradigm of development, which is anchored in intelligence and data. It's anchored in good solutions which are enabled by technology.
In a country where you have a central government and you have state governments, and a lot of this push happens at both levels, is there acceptance and a sign-on from state governments about what is needed to be smart, and how hard is it to navigate that landscape?
See, I think what's very important to understand is you could be a state, you could be your own city, but the aspirations of people living in those cities is going up exponentially. So they're putting pressure, their demands are higher, and today there's an opportunity. There is actually a national program. I don't think many countries have articulated a national program as large as Indian national program. And there's an opportunity for states to align, draw from the value that is being given, and to me it looks like it's a great opportunity to create an equitable society. It's a great opportunity to create a sustainable city. So everybody should actually root for that. And I'd like to really endorse what Jagan said, the two very important things he said. He talked about the cost of inaction. In India, strangely, very, very strangely, we have never calculated the economic cost of inaction. Like what Niranjan talked about, the economic cost of inaction of actually putting public transportation before you bring in something else. So if we do that, then our policies would really be shaped very well. And the other thing is fighting shy of technology. Can we actually afford to fight shy? For the simple reason that what is our 100 Smart Cities program? Are we actually trying to build greenfield cities? We are not. We are trying to retrofit existing cities. Now how, I pray, is that possible if we are not looking at technologies? We can't redesign our cities. We have violated all the design principles, and the cities are sprawling cities today. So if we have to shrink the city, get semblance of control, we need to use technologies, we need to understand data, sanitize the data, process the data, every city should have a city dashboard that talks about how critical infrastructure like water supply, power, drainage systems are working, so that we can put a finger on that and say, hey, this is where the problem is. You put in place technology, but should there not be some level of standardization for all of this technology, so you don't then create a class of extreme haves and have-nots, which we now have at different levels?
I fully agree with that, because the fact is that as of current stage of time, we do not have any specific standards, so to say, for a smart city. They are not defined as of now. But unless we have some standards, maybe to a small extent we can have service level benchmarks at least set up, so that everyone knows that if I'm supplying power, then it has to be for such and such time at least. If I do not supply for, let's say, instead of 24 hours, if I supply for 20 hours, then I'll be penalized. So the utilities have to understand that some basic service level benchmarks have to be set up. And once those basic service level benchmarks are in place, then I'm sure the quality of life which every one of us is aspiring for will automatically come in place. We need to ensure that some higher level needs of people are also taken into account. And I believe that's the Smart City Mission and the Smart City Challenge program which is going on, it does take into account the needs of the people.
So how do you get the private investor to stay invested in these projects? Because a lot of municipalities just don't have the money to carry out the kind of infrastructure development that we're talking about.
It's going to be a major challenge. Technology or finance is not going to be the major challenge. The policies, regulations, and the implementation framework is going to be a stumbling block. Now, under the Smart Cities Mission, we are talking about a tripartite agreement between the MOUD, that's the central government, and the state government and the local governing body. Don't know how much it will go forward, how much authority it gives. In developed countries, most of the city mayor, they are almost like a CEO of a company. They can take decisions, they can borrow money, they can do anything. We follow the general conditions of contract which is written in the 1950s. It has not changed. If you look at many of the procurement by electric utilities, which I am quite familiar with, situation is same with many other public sector organizations and local bodies. They all have unlimited liabilities. They all have defect liability which is written for civil engineering work, not for IT and automation systems. They have several other draconian clauses. Unless we change this procurement framework, nothing smart can be bought in this country.
What is clearly the future is a much more informed citizenry, a much more informed government. Let's not forget that government today doesn't even use the data it has at its own disposal. The data it collects, it does not use sufficiently to make decisions. So, everybody is learning, but this has to be a steep learning curve. We don't have time on our side, and this leapfrogging will take a very collective effort. And I believe that when we look at the Smart City mission converging with Make in India, with Digital India, with Skill India, if you think about convergence, which is really the mantra of the Smart City mission in some sense, that can deliver an enormous and an exponential change.
I'd like to thank each and every one of my panelists for actually being candid and having some very robust views and making this discussion interesting.